Hello and welcome back to the Everyday Leadership Series. Oh my goodness, I know we are in for a treat right now. I have the pleasure of interviewing Mr. Adam Piandes, and he works with CEOs, entrepreneurs, professional athletes, and organizations every day to help them develop leadership skills and solutions for both themselves and their businesses. He creates engaging and successful leadership programs that leverage a 25-year journey in developing leaders. Thousands of leaders from over 80 countries worldwide have completed Adam's courses. This is going to be fantastic. Not only that, Adam honed his leadership and communication skills via a dedicated yoga and meditation practice, competitive sports, and a love for surfing. I know I cannot wait for this conversation because it is sure to be a great one. Thank you so much for being on the show today, Adam. This is fantastic. So great to have you here.
I've been curious, anxious, and excited for this conversation now for weeks. So thanks for having me.
Yes. Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure. This is going to be a good one for sure. So how about we just kick it on off? And, obviously your bio intrigued me for sure with this yoga and meditation practice and everything. But just so we can level set everyone, tell us first, what does leadership mean to you?
Sure. It's a big question. Sure. And so I'll try to be as concise as possible. Leadership has many different directions I think that you can take it, but where it really starts is from within oneself. And, all the work that I do within myself and the personal growth practices that I put into place over the years have really helped me better understand, where my own shortcomings reside, where my own blind spots are, where my traumas exist within my body, and how these different things often shape the stories that run my life. So when I speak about leadership, I often start from that inward reflective perspective. The more a person is willing to learn about themselves and is able to be vulnerable in those spots that feel uncomfortable, this is where leadership resides and where leadership grows and expands from. And so when I think about spreading the word of leadership, it then becomes an extension of one's own personal journey within themselves. And then taking that and being willing to share it with others. And so, I've worked with lots of folks from around the world, from different cultures, from different ethnic backgrounds, from different belief systems. And I found that tends to be the common thread, that if there's a willingness for an individual to be reflective, to be vulnerable, to be open to sharing those things with others, this is where not only they find confidence, but they're able to support others in their own personal growth. And for me, that is how I would frame leadership.
I love that. And I think you made a very interesting point that I'd love you to dive deeper on, a willingness to be vulnerable and a willingness to be reflective. And then in that space, that's how people are able to build their confidence. Tell us more about that, because it's almost counterintuitive that if I'm being vulnerable, I can build confidence through that journey.
Yeah, I mean, when I speak about, there's a saying that I often share with people, is when you lead with vulnerability follows. If it wasn't such a tongue twister, I'd probably be able to say it a bit more fluidly. But so that vulnerability piece is what allows individuals to create that energetic connective tissue with people around them. As soon as I open up and I say, man, I'm feeling kind of scared about whatever it is. If there's somebody on the receiving end of that, they immediately go to a place where they've felt scared, perhaps in the past, or they've felt fearful about something that sounds quite familiar to what I'm talking about. Now we have established a connection. And so if there's a willingness to share with others from that place, now you're talking about connecting with others. When we think about leadership is built on the foundation of trust. Trust is only established when we have meaningful connection. So if there is an unwillingness to express from a vulnerable place, it's difficult to create that trust and create that connection. And so, and it's not always easy, because in the corporate environments that we grew up in, or the different ecosystems that we've been raised in, it's not always encouraged, or at least it hasn't been in previous paradigms. And so that's, for me, that willingness to go there and say, I have fears, I feel scared, I've been hurt, I feel hurt. Those are the things that truly open the door for real connection, trust, and essentially establishing that level of leadership that truly anyone can attain if they choose to.
I love all the places you've gone. This is, I think that this is a conversation, to your point, particularly when we're thinking about corporate America, and not just in the States. This is a global conversation, and certainly you're an expert in this, and we'll certainly talk about a lot of your more global experiences. But certainly in the workplace, it almost feels, I'm going to say, inappropriate, or just, even if it's not inappropriate, it's just unwelcome to be vulnerable and really show your true colors, especially when you're trying to play office politics and things like that we often associate, candidly, we often associate those things with leadership, and being in a position of authority and things like that. So how do you help your clients, I guess, almost buck the system and go there, showing their vulnerability? I mean, we're like Brene Brown right now. Like, how do you allow them to kind of shed that exoskeleton that I know in corporate I certainly put on, and really show up authentically, vulnerably, and go there?
Yeah, so like anything, when we think about shifting and we think about changing patterns and behaviors or belief systems, it doesn't happen all at once. In order for change not only to occur but to sustain, my belief is that it needs an incremental approach, right? So when I go into an organization, and if it's in person, or most if not all of my programs are virtual, I can't just step in right away and have the first thing be like, okay, so tell me, when's the first time you cried or whatever? I mean, I guess I could. And I'd probably be really surprised and encouraged by some of the responses I received. However, that can be a bit abrasive and can be, it can create a lot of fear for people to open up. So what we try to do, or what I try to do, is follow a very simple formula, which we refer to as know, connect, trust. So we give people an opportunity to share a little bit more about themselves as human beings. What are the things that drive you? What are the things that you're wanting to overcome? Where do your challenges reside? And slowly start to, create dialogue that allows people to connect from that place. If I were to say to you, when I was 5 years old, I fell off the swings and I hit my head, right? My guess is that this would conjure up a memory for you when you were 5 years old, or it would provide you with an image of a 5-year-old on the swings. And so now immediately, regardless if you had that experience or not, we're gonna connect from a child, from a youthful place, right? And so if we can connect from that inner child, and I don't need to get into different methodologies of therapy. However, we're connecting from that place inside of us that often drives our emotions, right? And so if I can create a storyline that feels familiar, well, now you know me, we've connected through my vulnerability, and we've established trust. And so when I work with people in organizations, and especially, I've gone in and worked with folks who have been in leadership positions for decades and have functioned from the old paradigm, which tends to be barking orders at others, putting up that wall, not letting people in emotionally. It has to be an incremental approach. And so, understanding through either intuition or just, feeling into a situation was what, for me, allows me to say, okay, where's this person at? how much can I sort of push the emotional envelope a little bit here, and then tap in with a frequency of questions that feel comfortable, yet pushes the edge a little bit, right? So that no connect trust model works for us. How do we get to know you? How do we create earnest connection, authentic connection, meaningful connection, emotional connection to build trust so that we can actually speak to one another like human beings? So
I'm loving this no connect trust model. And even more so, you mentioned a lot of things that are certainly nodding to what you mentioned, excuse me, what I referenced in your bio of, your practice of surfing and yoga and a lot of these more intuitive type of practices, speaking of things of intuition and again, going back to vulnerability and not relying on the barking orders, but really allowing people to get in. So tell us more because, when you think about a leadership expert, most people don't think about someone who admits, let's say on a regular basis, that they practice yoga and meditation or that surfing plays an active role in their professional pursuits. So I'd love for you to just explore that a little bit more and tell us how those two sides of you really complement each other.
That's a cool question. So we'll start with the dynamics of surfing for one. It's the thing about the ocean that is so so evident and so powerful and so incredibly humbling every time that I step into the water is that it's every moment in there is going to be its own unique experience. So if I was able to read a wave correctly and get into the pocket of the wave and really have a beautiful ride, that's a moment in time, because right after that, my ass is maybe on the ground of the ocean floor. You know what I mean? So there's a constant movement and flow that often that changes at every moment, right? And so what the practice of surfing does for me, or yoga or meditation, is that it reminds me that it's really important to be flexible and nimble in my pursuits, and to always remind me that I don't have the answers. However, if I'm willing to relax, breathe, and surrender, I can allow myself to get into the flow of what's happening in that moment. And so when we talk about leadership, it isn't a push, right? It's not, how do I push my way into a leadership role? It's more of an opening. It's more of a, how can I be in service to the ever-changing surroundings around me, right? And so the ever-changing surroundings in a corporate environment are human beings that are having their own human being experiences that contain a plethora of emotions that will guide their days, and sometimes not so smoothly. So, being able to feel into the ebbs and flows of whatever ecosystem that we reside in is so incredibly important. And that is through connection of the body. It's through connection of the heart. And oftentimes when I've worked with people or organizations, incrementally, we have to help them shift from the head to the heart, because the mind wants to dictate, wants to control how things operate and how people flow around us. However, the body and the heart is what allows us to connect to their needs, and their needs are changing by the minute, by the second. And so when I think about these different external practices, and if I can bring some of the lessons and the humilities that I've learned from these external practices into a corporate space, into a group environment, and I don't only work in corporate environments. I've worked with gentlemen who are currently institutionalized and incarcerated, worked in school programs. The same philosophies and the same rules apply regardless of where a person is in their in their physical world reality and in their earth life curriculum, right? It's like, how do we help one another surrender and flow so that we can tap into one another's emotions and we can connect in a real way, so we can build trust and explore that foundation?
I'm curious because, you're blowing my mind because the things that you are tapping into on the outside, I would assume would be incongruent with the audience that you're telling me is most receptive. So, for example, tapping into the ebbs and flows in life and dealing with incarcerated or previously incarcerated individuals, even in corporate America, again, it just seems almost like this juxtaposition. So, when you're looking for people that you work with, is it a cultural, like a corporate culture that you look for to be a match, or are you changing corporate cultures? Because there are definitely some organizations that I think that transition from head to heart would be extremely significant. And so I'm just curious, kind of how does that flow? Are they already kind of going down this path and you help push them down, or are you kind of this catalyst towards that transition?
I hope all of those things, and when I think about what are some of the communities that have come into our programs, quite honestly, Rochelle, like when I have just said, you know what, I'm not going to push and we'll see what happens. I'm just going to share what I believe in. Things just come in, like I didn't have a plan to start running programs with incarcerated adults. A woman listened to a talk that I gave who approached me and I was like, let's do this. Right. Organizations is a bit of a different beast, if you will, right? There's navigating the politics of decision makers within an organization and, connecting with someone who believes in my vision is important. And, within organizations, if we haven't had the buy-in from the managers or executive leadership, it becomes really difficult to successfully move teams through an extended program. So our
Sure.
approach has been with organizations that we develop leaders at all levels. And so, I've done a lot of research on the concept of modern leadership, which is the modern day leader is one who coaches, is one who listens, not one who directs and tells people what to do. And so it was something like 80% of organizations who believe and practice the notion that everyone in their organization is a leader tends to follow the guidelines of modern leadership, right? They're the organizations who embrace the notion that everyone in here is fully capable and everyone in here is here to learn and grow. And so we're going to foster an environment where we can teach and coach one another and rise together, as you sort of alluded to before we got on the call here. And the organizations that do not adhere to the shift into modern leadership, my belief is that they're just not going to be around in 10 years. There's such a dynamic shift that's taking place that encourages this new paradigm to blossom and flourish. And this idea of modern leadership is a really powerful one. I believe that we have to embrace the idea that everyone that's here is here for a reason, and everyone here is fully capable. So let's speak to one another as if that's the case.
Oh, I love that. I'm going to read more about modern leadership. I haven't heard that particular phraseology before, but I think definitely there's a trend from I've heard it from command and control to more of a coaching style leadership model, which is, which is exactly what you're speaking of. Because you're right. When we think about the traditional leadership or person of authority, you think about someone that is barking orders, the military sergeant telling you to go and run, or do. And that doesn't necessarily resonate with, the current workforce that is certainly becoming younger, millennial, Generation Z.
And now they're saying, if someone's saying run, do, now they're saying no thanks. Actually, you know what? I will. Actually, you know what? I will run. Because there's another job somewhere else.
What a great suggestion! Yeah, now that you mention it,
where are my shoes? It really feeds into this whole discussion around the Great Resignation. Perhaps you've heard this phrase being thrown around. People are saying,
yes, for sure.
Sorry, dude, but this is not. I'm good. somewhere else. So if companies want to keep their best people, and this isn't a new concept, right? This is something that has always been a challenge for organizations. How do we keep our best people? Now more than ever, it really, I believe it comes down to the no connect trust model. Not to like push my own stuff too hard here, but it's in very simple terms. How do you create an environment within your organization where people feel connected, like truly feel connected? Otherwise, they're going to split. There's just no need to stick around. And that's, to me, as a bit of an adventurer, it's just being sort of an adventurer of life here in many respects. That's just so encouraging for me to hear that people are like, I'm going to go create my own magic or whatever it is somewhere else. So.
Right. No, I agree. I think, obviously the pandemic and everything, certainly a tragedy in many respects. But the silver lining is certainly a allowing people to really reevaluate their life choices, where they choose to spend their time, how they choose to spend their time, what they think their career should be, and the limitations or self-limitations that we can put on what we can and cannot achieve. So I think more people are tapping into philosophies that you've been practicing for decades, of if I'm going to be more mindful in where I spend my time, would I choose this same career path? Would I choose the same employer? So forth and so on. So, with that in mind, I'd love to get your feedback on, what is one leadership skill or trait that you feel most people tend to overlook?
Self-compassion, I believe, is probably the most important leadership skill available to all of us. So when our programs, our sort of anchor program or our core program is a 6-week experiential workshop called The Art of Masterful Communication. And there are 12 modules within the program, and module 6 is on self-compassion. So the first 6 modules are what we refer to as internal communication. What's going on inside, and then external communication. How do you address and speak to the people, places, and things around you? And the linchpin between the two is compassion, right? So every day we have thousands of fears that run through our heads. Most of them are subtle. Some of them are obvious, like, oh, here comes a lion, right? That creates some fear, right? But the other ones inside are like,
I don't know if anyone has ever said, here comes a lion, as calmly as you just did.
Exactly. Yeah. I guess you just need practice being around lions, which I don't have much of, but, and then the other one here, the subtle fears, are the storylines, the misinterpretations of reality that we create within ourselves that suggest that we're not good enough, that we're not worthy, that we're not capable, that, oh man, that happened before, so it's inevitably going to happen again. And so I'm just going to sit in the old victim seat here and get real comfortable, right? And so those are the stories that dictate the pace that we move through our days. And so often we're unaware of the fact that those are the drivers. And so when we start as individuals to choose to develop self-awareness and put practices into place that help us identify these storylines, oh, there I go again, telling myself I'm not capable. There I go again, telling myself I'm not good enough. Oh, there's that shame. There it is. Well, it's not going to disappear right away, but the acknowledgement that it's actually there allows an individual to create distance from it. So they don't envelop it as part of who they are as a person, right? It's like, okay, I see that's happening. And this is the practice of meditation, right? Here comes the thought. I'm seeing the thought. I'm distancing from the thought. It's just a thought. I'm not going to take that on to believe it's part of who I am. And so when we can create that distance, we can say, oh, there it is. There I go again, telling myself that I'm not good enough and I'm not worthy. All this is a judgment that I'm placing upon myself. So you know what? I'm going to forgive myself for that judgment. I'm going to throw some compassion in there. And so that sense of self-awareness and the depth that you can take that to allows for this constant flow of self-compassion. I mean, if I'm in a flow and I am in a place where I'm aware of how I move through my day, I have to give myself self-compassion many, many times throughout the day, because those storylines will pop up. And so what does that do for an individual? Well, it prepares an individual to step out and actually lead others. And it's to see other people, to see that they're going through their own challenges, that they're going through their own storylines that are, creating this false sense of reality, that they're not good enough or they're not worthy or whatever it is. And so in order to be able to give others compassion, you must develop a practice to give it to yourself. And when we're talking about leadership, this is the skill, I believe. I mean, you can put skills and build on top of it. Like, how do you listen more effectively? How do you guide people? How do you ask good questions? The foundation is that practice of self-forgiveness and self-compassion.
I love that. And so I think that it's really powerful in that, a person, as they are going through their journey of self-reflection, and I think you call it a misinterpretation of reality. That phrasing really landed on me. And so I can see how it improves the person and allows them to see the other person, that they may be going through their own self-reflection and self-compassion journey. I'm curious, so how does this play out in the larger organization? Because, we're talking to business leaders here, listening to this series, and ultimately they have to substantiate it to their leaders and, the people that they have to answer to. So we understand this is important, and they may understand it on an individual level, but how do they substantiate that value to, the people that need to, endorse or be in alignment with helping them go through this sort of practice?
That's a great question. I mean, I think we could just sit them all in a room, give them a bunch of tissues, and play sad music. There's one way we could do it. You just need, you just need the overhead and the space, and to make that happen. I've worked with some real prominent global organizations, and where we've come in and instituted our program within a specific department, and have just, if everything aligns, because there's a lot of moving parts to ensure that a program runs successfully within an organization. However, when things align and people dive into our program, we often scale from within the organization, because they're like, what's going on over there? We're looks like there's some real stuff. I'm trying not to swear. There's some real stuff that's going on over there. And, perhaps there's an opportunity to expand. And when I've had an opportunity to work from the top down and work with executives and get them in a room, or create an environment, or provide a platform that gives them permission to express themselves, to be vulnerable, to let everyone know that they're scared and they don't know what they're doing most of the time, or whatever it is. If there's that willingness from the top, then you have the opportunity for the trickle down effect. And so, it isn't, again, it's this shift from head to heart. If the leaders can embody this belief system and can speak from that place, then, like, inevitably people are going to witness this and are going to respond differently, right? If the head of a company goes up to the intern that just got in there and was like, said something along the lines of, yeah, I really felt scared about that thing. Now the intern looks at this person and says, oh, wait, you're a human being. You're not just you're not just Mr. and Mrs. CEO, right? And then it gives them
got a corporate robot.
Yeah, and it gives that person permission to say, oh, well, I'm allowed to be scared. I don't have to walk around here pretending like I have all the answers. And so, when we think about organizations that want to shift into this paradigm of modern leadership, this is a really important component that, where people are encouraged to share from a place of authenticity and to coach others and to encourage others to do the same. Now there's that's the top-down approach. The bottom-up approach is the one I was alluding to before, when it's like, oh, there's one pod over here that's having certain types of discussions. Now there's another pod over here, and there's another pod over here. And now we can create a language that then, perhaps rises upward in the ranks, if you will. So, for me, it's like, I don't know. I have no expectations ever when we go into any of these endeavors. It's just kind of like, who gravitates towards it? Is there a willingness for people to participate, and who's going to show up? And if they show up, awesome.
It's so sweet. I love this. And I like your positioning, because even that is you being empathetic and giving yourself compassion, in that you're not expecting a result. You're saying, hey, this is what we have to offer. If it's a fit for you, if you think this is an alignment, then we'd love to have you. If not, so be it. And so I think that is such a freeing perspective.
Expectation is the root of all disappointment.
Yeah. That's good. Going along those same lines, obviously you are world traveler, a very long and very impactful career. And certainly you're serving a lot of different organizations at the highest level. So, if you had to focus on one skill or action to really excel in both your personal life as well as your professional career, what would it be?
Can you say that question again?
If you had to focus on one skill or one action that would propel you forward both personally and professionally, what would it be?
I'm not allowed to use self-compassion again, I take it. So let's go another one.
No, that's been taken. That's what people overlook. This is your particular one, unless it's the same.
This is cool, because I would put right up there with that is listening. And I, as a coach for individuals, and I've worked with a lot of different people in a lot of different arenas, doing a bunch of different things in a one-on-one basis. My job essentially is to listen. As soon as I start to impart my own wisdom on the other individual, I am choosing to impart my own biases and my own beliefs in terms of what is appropriate and inappropriate. And the truth is, I have no freaking clue what is best for the other person on the other end, right? So when I listen and truly show up, what I'm indirectly saying to that person is, you have all the answers inside of you, and I'm not going to pretend I know what they are. So let's have a conversation here and a dialogue where you start to believe that you have the ability to extract those answers from within. And then my job is to continue to listen and continue to be neutral in my approach and objective when I show up. Now, a person may say something that is really, really challenging to hear, that perhaps flies in the face of my own personal values. And guess what? That doesn't matter, because it's not for me to judge what's best for that person. It's not for me to judge what is right and what is wrong, right? If I can show up from a place of neutrality, and if I can just be a listener and let them know that I'm there, that I see them, that I hear them, and that I'm like, I don't know what's best for you. I truly don't. From that place, we rid ourselves of advice giving, and we move into a place of service. Right. So I would say listening is the skill. It's not difficult to do. You just listen. Right. However, most people don't do it well.
Right. Most people don't do it well. And it's, when I think of an executive coach or someone that is advising at this level, to hear you say that you're helping them find it within themselves and not automatically trying to solve it for them, my whole paradigm shifted right there, because, on first blush, you think that I'm going to go to you and you're going to give me all the answers. You're going to show me what to do and guide me. But instead you're allowing the other person to dare I say, embody their own leadership and guide themselves through the journey. Well, I guess they work through the journey themselves, and you're acting somewhat as a guide as they go through that. It sounds so powerful.
Yeah,
It sounds so powerful.
and if for anyone who's out there and this lands on them or this resonates for them, if you're in a leadership role, it can be really impactful and can support you in ways that you may not be aware of right now, to inform other people that you're working with that are on your teams, your other leaders, or whatever it is, that, look, I honestly, I have no idea what's best for you. I have no clue. Right. However, I am in support fully of you discovering what that is. Right. And so it's incredibly at least for me, it sounds incredibly empowering to position it that way.
It does.
Right. It's like, oh, okay, this person is indirectly telling me that they trust me wholeheartedly to make decisions and choices from that place within myself that feels true, that feels real. And it also is saying to me that it gives me permission to kind of mess up a little bit, right? And allow things to be messy.
Right.
Rather than someone who comes in and wants to control the environment and wants to control the outcomes and wants to, constantly impart their wisdom on other people. There's a time and a place to tell stories. And, if someone says, just please, please, please tell me what you think. Please, please, please tell me what you think. Perhaps there's an opportunity to share and to really hold in that place. It's like, I can share this with you and I don't know what's best for you. So to hold that line
and then
is a powerful place. Yeah.
I think that's brilliant. And then, to your previous point of know, connect, trust, the other thing that came across to me when you're saying, I don't know the answers for you, but, I'm going to hold the space for you to explore it, is that for me, it deepened the connection and it really laid the foundation for that trust to actually grow and build. So I think that is also, very powerful as we're talking about transitioning the culture of the organization, or even your personal interactions. It's like, okay, this is how you build trust and connection, because you're not, barking or superimposing your ideas on someone else. Instead, you're allowing them to share, and you're just there as their confidant almost, as they go through this journey, which is a very intimate experience.
It is. And so why do we need to create trust, right? Like who cares, right? Well, if you can get to know someone, create deep, meaningful connection and build earnest trust, now you step into conflict from a different place. And conflict is inevitable. It's inevitable. There's no way to avoid it. You can try. And I'm working with someone right now, or well, I don't want to get into this, but I've working with someone in a senior leadership position. Senior. I don't even know what that means. They're in a senior level leadership position.
They're senior.
Way up there. And conflict has been something that has been challenging for this person, right? And so when we shift into the mindset that conflict is inevitable, so let's talk about it in that way. Let's not assume that if we have conflict, that means that we don't get along or we're just going to break down or that, we should be working with each other or whatever it is. Conflict is inevitable. And there's only two types of conflict that exist in the world. There's healthy and there's unhealthy, right? And so if we don't have the no connect trust model, I can almost guarantee you that you're going to go down the path of unhealthy conflict, which is an inability to communicate from a heart-centered place. There's an inability to listen. My challenge is stubbornness, right? In the past, I can be quite stubborn. I know that I'm coming across here as being this free-flowing dude, but I can be a stubborn SOB.
I would not have guessed stubbornness at all.
So it's just something that that I have to work on, right? And so when I can trust another person and when I've connected with them, it then allows me to dissolve this sense of stubbornness and allows us to have conflict from a place where I can hear them, acknowledge them, listen to them. And so if we can move through that conflict, then we move into the ultimate arena and the goal, which is alignment, right? In order to get aligned, you have to move through conflict. In order to have healthy conflict, you have to build trust. And so what happens with organizations is people come into an organization, someone's new, they come in and they're like, oh, cool, I love this place. And, everyone here is so cool. And, yeah, exactly. I've always wanted to do this, and the mission is right up my alley, and like, we're just going to crush it. And then we assume trust because there are some similarities that exist that feel good to us when we walk in. So when right. Trust is assumed, this is when unhealthy conflict blindsides us, because now conflict pops up, and we haven't really taken the time to know and connect with one another. And so now what do we do? Well, now resentment kicks in. Now we hold grudges. Now we have to backtrack and spend more money, time, and resources. Let's get people in a room and let's have a conversation. Let's bring in a mediator. Let's do all of these things that costs us money, costs us time, and it's like pushing a boulder up a hill to be able to earn that trust once it's been, once you go down that path, right? So ultimately we want to be aligned. Inevitably we're going to have conflict. You have to take the time and put resources towards building that earned trust.
I think it's really good, because I think a lot of us do almost live in this dream world where conflict can't happen, or it's not going to happen. And you're being a negative Nancy if you're trying to, assume that it will. But the reality of life is, as long as you have two adults or more, there will be conflict, just by the nature of each person having their own personality and their own perspectives of the world. So I think that is a really good idea of how can I almost prepare for the conflict ahead of time. And in that preparation, I'm inevitably shifting it from unhealthy to healthy conflict. I'm not trying to live in a delusionary state that it won't happen. Instead, I'm being proactive and prepared. So I think that is excellent. You've shared so many cool perspectives in a way that, yes, you definitely come across as, I would not have guessed that stubbornness was something you struggled with or currently working through.
I can introduce you to a few people who would let you know just how stubborn I can be.
They'd be like, oh, you have no idea.
Yeah. You're seeing one side of Adam.
So, clearly you are successful in many rights, and that's obviously why people choose to work with you. So let's pull back the curtain a little bit. Let's get Adam unplugged, so to speak. What do you consider to have been your secret weapon for success up until now?
I would say that throughout my adult life and my journey, I have always opened up myself to receive support. And I've always brought people into my life who will truly challenge me. So whether it be working with a therapist, a coach, I've delved into the sort of the spiritual world and worked with holistic healers, shamans, and formed small men's groups with my brothers who are in similar lines of work, who are choosing to be in service, who are practiced and skilled at really asking me challenging questions, not just hey bro, high five, how's life going? Cool. You're doing this, this, and this. Oh, awesome. But more so what's that about? What's that about when you shy away from intimacy? Or what's that about when you choose not to, speak your voice, like use your voice. And so I've been partnering with people in various capacities over the last 25 years to, continue to ask me difficult questions, to continue to hold me accountable. And the more that I continue to acknowledge that I don't know anything, right? I really don't. And so what that allows me to do then is to continue to explore, right? It's like, I don't have any answers, but what I do have is an opportunity to explore within myself. And the more that I can do that, the more quote unquote successful, I can be. And for me, successful it's so subjective, right? What does successful mean,
Certainly.
And so there are many men that I've worked with who are incarcerated who are free, and there are many folks who are in the corporate world or whatever it is who are enslaved, and so it's like, how do we as individuals choose to create a construct of the mind that allows us to be free, and that comes through self-exploration, and that comes through acknowledging and recognizing that you have an ego, and that the ego is there to serve you. And I've been told many times in my past that I have a massive ego, and so it has served me in competing and what have you, and at times it has served me as a means of encouragement to look a little bit deeper.
Yeah. I think your honesty and even vulnerability in this interview, it really shines through that you're deeply committed to personal work. And so that in and of itself is attractive. And I can certainly see why so many different genres of people choose to work with you. So, I'd love to open it up. I know that you have a gift that you'd love to share with the audience. So tell us more about that, and how, because I'm sure there are tons of people that are like, I got to call this Adam guy. Like, he has it all together. He's got the cool, I just got back from vacation haircut going. Like, I'm loving this vibe. Like, how do I get in touch with this guy, and how can I learn more?
Well, thank you for acknowledging my haircut. As I shared with you before, this thing was not going to fit in the screen prior to getting it cut. So there's a couple things that we have that we could offer, and I just have to land on one because we've got a lot going on. Mm-hmm. One is entry into our Art of Masterful Communication program. The other that we're working on right now is to talk a bit more about this Great Resignation piece, because it's something that is relevant and fascinates me, because it gets into the deeper layers of why humans are why people are making the choices they're making. And so this is perhaps a roundabout way of saying, we'll get you something here real soon, but these are the things that, we have options, and I'll be sure to land on one of them. But those are, that's kind of where I am right now, and the things that I'm working on. So.
Well, no doubt, whatever Adam and his team would put together, it will be linked just below this video. So, I have no doubt that it will be incredibly valuable and of a strong value add to everyone that chooses to partake in it. So I know I'm intrigued about both of those different programs, because they both seem to offer, again, a paradigm shift that I don't think is that is, I don't want to say accepted, but I'll say popular in the working environment. But it certainly should be, because if anything comes from this interview, it's that, when you do have that paradigm shift, that your whole aura and your being, it's incredibly attractive, and it allows people to say, I want some of that, and how can I have some? And so I can only imagine the impact of the work that you do in a variety of organizations. So with that, Adam, any final thoughts before we sign off today?
Yeah, as you were sharing that, there's an expression that came up. I had an opportunity to participate in a master's program that was fairly unique. It was a master's in spiritual psychology program from the University of Santa Monica. Only in LA would you find a program.
Only in LA.
A master's that, that kind of delves into those worlds. There was an expression that the teacher who'd been teaching the program for 40 years and is one of the most powerful facilitators that I've ever been around, Mary Hulnick, used to say, outer experience is a reflection of inner reality, right? Your outer experience is a reflection of your inner reality. So if you choose to clean up your inner reality, your outer experiences will inevitably shift as well. And so I think it's a good summation of the things that we've talked about today. And, what I'll also say, Rochelle, is, and I shared this with you before we get on here, is that, I just want to acknowledge you for creating a process that was really super easy and fluid for me to follow. I didn't have to think too much. I got a lot going on, and you've really been in service to me. And so, I just acknowledge you for creating that outer experience to reflect what I imagine to be your inner reality. So thank you.
My pleasure. My pleasure. It has been obviously my honor to interview you today and create this entire series, because I think it's of strong value add. And, selfishly, I'm always looking to improve my leadership skills. And, as a person who, my background is in engineering, and then really started my career in the building materials space and then real estate development. So these very, I'll say, toughest nails type of industries. And how do you allow yourself to take a leadership role even when you're not in a position of authority? Because a lot of times we can resign ourselves that, I don't have the fancy title, therefore I'm disempowered. But that doesn't necessarily have to be the case. You can always lead by influence. And to your point, it's a reflection of your inner world. And, whether or not someone else chooses to acknowledge it with standardized titles, it doesn't mean that you can't show up powerfully, authentically, and certainly have an impact in the outer experience that we all share. So that's definitely how I come to this leadership perspective. So that's how a chemical engineer comes to this world. But it really is about that whole self-empowerment that we've talked about many times throughout this conversation. So, Adam, this was absolutely one of my favorites. I absolutely love this interview. I think we had a brilliant time today. Thank you so much. And I really appreciate you showing up here on the Everyday Leadership Series.
Oh, thanks so much, Rochelle. Keep shining.
How amazing was that information-packed interview? This Everyday Leadership Series is truly next level in terms of the quality of expert as well as the candor at which they're sharing their leadership suggestions. The truth is, your experience does not have to end here. That's why I'm inviting you to upgrade to the VIP package. As a reminder, when you upgrade to VIP, not only do you get access to the recordings, the video, audio, as well as transcripts, you also get access to the action guide. This is for folks who think, I'm too busy, I barely have time to watch the interviews as it is. Will I actually review the recordings? With the action guide, think of this as your Cliff Notes version of the best suggestions and highest level content that each expert suggested, curated into a special manual that you can use as a reference guide. It truly is a game changer. Not only that, VIP registrants get one-on-one access to a complimentary leadership strategy session with myself, as well as an invitation to our next masterclass. So don't delay. Go ahead and upgrade to VIP now.